Do you believe in wormholes? What about teleportation? I'm talking full ships that can disappear and reappear. What if I told you that exact thing happened in 1943? Follow me down the rabbit hole about the USS Eldridge and the Philadelphia experiment. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of The Rabbit Hole. My name is Dani, and today we are talking about the Philadelphia experiment. This also ties in together with the Montauk Project, which is exactly what I'm going to do next week, so that way we can tie all these things together. But I did want to apologize for last week. I got this weird cold out of the blue, and all of a sudden I couldn't talk, and it was weird. So anyway, it wasn't COVID, don't you guys worry, but it was just weird, and I didn't want to give you a half-done, weird episode, so I decided to just go ahead and do the whole episode for this week. So let's get into this. In the summer of 1943, you all know what was happening, right? World War II. So you had the USS Eldridge being fitted with top-secret generators to avoid enemy radar, right? So they were just trying to be avoid the U-boats. That way, the U-boat torpedoes wouldn't hit our battleships and we could get our troops onto shore, safely. Which makes sense. I mean, the concept is genius. So it's supposed to be this new kind of magnetic field created by Einstein and Tesla together, which is the only project that Tesla and Einstein actually ever worked on together. So it's supposed to be using Tesla's coils and Einstein's unified fields theory. And we're going to get into this unified fields theory over and over in this episode. It kind of plays this really key role. On October 28th, 1943, they were trying to test this new equipment to see, hey, if maybe this boat, the USS Eldridge, would disappear from our radars. This would be great. And if not, well, we're just going to do some more work. And honestly, if the USS Eldridge had done the proper thing, then they would have outfitted more of our boats with this magnetic field, right? These top secret generators. Instead of, it worked, kind of. There was this blue, they turned on these generators, and there's this blue-green glow that surrounded the ship, and then the ship was gone. Poof, vanished. Not gone from radars. I mean, it was gone from radars, right? But the boat was gone. Totally vanished. No longer there. And then the ship appeared in Norfolk, Virginia, and then back in the Philadelphia shipyard. So if you don't know how far this is, the Norfolk shipyard, or the Norfolk, Virginia, where the base is there, the Navy base, that's 272 miles from the Philadelphia shipyard and about 5 hours by car. So it's not a short little distance. You can't just pop over there and pop back. Along with that, the USS Eldridge is not a tiny little ship. This thing is not small. So the ship is 306 feet long, which is just under a football field length, which a football field is 360 feet. So we're about 60 feet less than a football field. This thing's big, and it's 1,240 tons. This boat is heavy. It's big. It's not a small thing, and they just literally just made it vanish. If that isn't weird enough, there are some really weird things that happened to the sailors that were aboard the ship. So, some of them reported having some mental disorders, right? I mean, you literally disappeared on a ship and then reappeared twice. You disappeared from Philadelphia, reappeared in Norfolk, disappeared from Norfolk, reappeared in Philadelphia. If that doesn't give you mental health issues, I don't know what will. Some were said to have rematerialized inside out. Some of the things, this one's probably like the weirdest thing. I mean, the rematerialization inside out, that's pretty freaking weird, right? But then you also had some sailors, at least one sailor, right, that was literally fused into the bulkheads of the boat. And if you don't know what the bulkheads are, they are like the walls. That's what they call walls on a ship. That's a little Navy lingo for you. Also just sailor lingo. Literally, if you've ever been on a boat, that's what they're called. But yeah, so some of there was a guy that was literally fused into the bulkhead, and he was still alive, actually, when this boat reappeared. He was just living inside the bulkhead. But that's what we know about that guy. Some sailors didn't come back with the ship at all. It was said that they got lost in a space-time continuum. However, we're going to get into those sailors later on, and that's kind of how we tie into the Montauk Project. So hold on to that theory, because there's two sailors that just disappeared. They're brothers. Yeah, there's some weird shit that goes on with those two. And then later, like, it was said, there's a couple different stories like this. So it was said that either like there was a sailor in a bar and he just vanished, like he was talking to somebody drinking a beer and just vanished. But also, like, there was a similar story to that where it was said that two sailors had disappeared, or like became invisible and like broke into a bar. I don't know. So this story is it goes a couple different ways. There's definitely sailors going invisible in a bar. Whether it was a sailor talking to somebody in a bar and vanishing, like going invisible, or whether it was two sailors that went invisible and then robbed a bar. Those are the stories that are out there. So I wanted to include that story, but again, I had to, there's too many variables, so I wanted to show you both variables. Something about an invisible sailor in a bar, which, I mean, if you know anything about the Navy, those sailors are definitely in the bar. And that is said to just like be a side effect of just being on the ship, just being around these coils, just being around like this magnetic field. So I don't know, there's some weird things that happen to these sailors. And like I said, we're going to get into some really weird things in a while. But how do we really know about this story? So this is kind of where a lot of people start. And this is like the bulk of our story, right? Because yes, you have this ship, it disappeared, it came back. Everyone's like, that's freaking outlandish. No way does a ship just disappear and come back. No way is there just sailors like fused to bulkheads. Like, that's just weird, right? Well, how do we know this story? In 1956, this guy named Morris Jessup got this letter in the mail. Who is Morris Jessup? I'm glad you asked. Morris Jessup is an author / like astronomer, and he has worked in different colleges. He's done different things, and he is really obsessed with aliens. And he wrote this book, because he is an author, that's called The Case for the UFO. And in this book, he was like, hey, Einstein's unified field theory was actually like shared because the aliens gave me like a way to do it, and he explained it in his book that like the aliens told me about this theory. Up until this point, and even now till today, apparently Einstein's unified field theory has never been proven. So you have Jessup here saying like, oh, the aliens told me about this unified field theory and that we can do it. And this man named Carl M. Allen, or Carlos Miguel Allende, he goes back and forth with his name in his letters, writes to Jessup and was like, hey man, like, cool book. Although, you know, it's kind of not true, because Einstein actually proved his unified field theory. Yeah, like, it's still a theory, and you're saying like the aliens have a way that we can do it. Well, Einstein did it. And so let me explain Einstein's unified field theory a little bit here for a second. So It basically attempts to merge like the forces of gravity and electromagnetism into like one fundamental field, which makes sense because you have a unified field, right? So it's trying to take multiple fields of study and put them all together to do things like time travel or teleportation, all these things that is apparently done at the Philadelphia experiment. So Allende writes to Jessup and's like, hey, so yeah, this theory's been proven. It's been done. Let me tell you a little story, right? And he tells Jessup in this letter, I was on the SS Fruseth, which is a Coast Guard boat that was also docked in Philadelphia at the time of this experiment in 1943. But nobody was supposed to be on that boat that day. So, Allende goes on to say, like, this boat literally disappeared. I was there. I watched, like, this green-blue glow, and it looked like a force field came around this boat, and then it was gone. Although the dent from, like, the boat being in the water, the dent was still there. But there are witnesses saying, like, this boat totally appeared in Norfolk and reappeared in Philadelphia. But when it reappeared, Allende heard like the screams of these sailors that are fused to bulkheads, these sailors that are like rematerialized inside out, like all these crazy things that are happening. And he's saying, this is 13 years later, he's saying that none of these sailors are still alive. Everybody's dead now. I'm the only one that knows this story, and you have to believe me. He was the one, apparently in his letter, it was written that the invisible sailors had raided the bar. So that's where we're getting that story. Again, from a different source somewhere else, I heard that they went invisible. That's why I just vanished. But the bar theory is still there. And he's writing to Jessup and he's telling him all these things. And over the course of a year, he writes him like 50 plus letters. He writes him all kinds of things. But in all of his letters, he really never comes back to like give more details. It just like he's just reiterating all the details he's already given Jessup and says, yeah, like the boat disappeared and this is what happened, right? All these things we already know. But he's the first person, Allende is, to come forward in those 13 years that since this boat has done this, to say and to like bring it up. But of course, Allende does say that the Navy has gone to great lengths to get this thing covered up and to not show anybody. But that the unified field theory was proven and the Navy did try to weaponize it. Which all makes sense, really. If you're from a military perspective, I feel like that's the basis of a lot of movies. Like superpowers are like, oh, let's weaponize them, right? Robots, let's weaponize robots. So yeah, let's weaponize this unified field theory. If we can use teleportation or we could use time travel, we could definitely do some really cool things. Of course, hearing this and reading this, Jessup was like, I really want to believe you. And he really did try to take Allende seriously. He tried to look into all the things he was saying, but he couldn't ever like prove anything that was being said. So Jessup, like after trying to believe him, just kind of like brushed him off. However, in 1957, the Navy got this package. And in this package was a book. It was called The Case of the UFO. Familiar? It was Jessup's book. And in the margins of this book were 3 different handwritings and 3 different pens. And one of the guys referred to him by his name. The other 2, they just called him Mr. A, Mr. B. And they were trying to figure out like what these guys were talking about, because they would refer to humans like they were extraterrestrials. And they referred to the experiment that the Navy did back in 1943. So then they called Jessup. They're like, dude, we got this thing. We need you to come in. We need you to take a look at it. Jessup comes in. He looks at this book. He's like, yep, definitely my book, which was nobody cared that it was Jessup's book. The weird thing was all the writing in the margins of this book. And Jessup instantly recognized Mr. A's handwriting and was like, hey, I know that guy. That's Allende, right? He hands over all his letters to the Navy. It was like, hey, Navy, like, check it out. Like, this guy was writing me letters about this exact same thing. So, the Navy was like, oh, that's really weird and odd. They made like 120 copies of this book for their research. They started doing some serious research into this. And because of what was written in the margins, they sent this book up the chain of command to these two officers that were in charge of like the special projects. And the special projects do things like what they were suggesting happened in the Philadelphia experiment.
Did you know that over 40% of Americans have a hard time swallowing pills? So when it's time to take your vitamins, large capsules and pills are out of the question. We know that gummy vitamins exist, but they're full of sugar, they get stuck in your teeth, and they only contain a fraction of the nutrients you need. Luckily, Easy Melts has discovered the ultimate vitamin sweet spot. Vitamins that melt in your mouth, taste like a treat, and are packed with nutrients ready for absorption, all without an ounce of sugar. For a limited time, Easy Melts is giving listeners a free 3-month supply of vitamin D3 with their first purchase. To claim your free D3 vitamins, visit try.easymelts.com/spring24. That's melts.com/spring24. Say goodbye to the old way of taking your vitamins and say hello to the easy way. Menopausal and perimenopausal women, listen up. It's time to take control of your health and comfort, and Winona is here to help. Winona is a telemedicine company for menopause care who believes that your symptoms are real, important, and deserve to be taken seriously. And for many women, this starts with hormone replacement therapy. Winona's HRT is made with plant-based, bioidentical hormones rather than synthetic ones, so it better aligns with your body to offer relief from hot flashes, weight gain, and other uncomfortable symptoms. 80% of women who use Winona find relief within just 90 days. So, what are you waiting for? Get started today. Visit buywinona.com today to start your free visit. With free shipping and the ability to pause or cancel at any time, your path to wellness has zero obligations. Use code SPRING24 at buywinona.com for 25% off your first treatment plan. That's BYWINONA.com for 25% off. Winona. Menopause care made easy.
Well, to Jessup, the fact that it was sent up the chain of command, sent up so high in the Navy to these two people that deal with this kind of thing, it was kind of like reassuring to him that maybe Allende wasn't crazy after all. Maybe everything he was saying was true, and that's why the Navy is taking this so seriously, because the Navy won't take like false accusations this seriously, right? Like they wouldn't. And plus, this isn't something that's going to happen in the future, like they're preparing for it. This is something that happened in the past that they apparently covered up. So the Navy takes this so seriously. Jessup starts saying maybe Allende's not crazy, and he starts doing a lot more research into these letters and into what has been said. But we will never know what Jessup found, because in 1959, mysteriously, Jessup was found dead of an apparent suicide. Did he actually commit suicide? We don't know. We don't know if it was him or what happened. It could have been a lot of different things, right? Obviously I run a conspiracy theory podcast, so conspiracy theories are always in my brain. But there was a pipe coming from his exhaust, or like a hose from his exhaust into his window. It was taped on, and it was taped onto the window. Like there was no way he could get the hose out. So it could have been somebody else trying to like stage a suicide, but also it could have actually been Jessup, who could have just been depressed and died. It's just weird that we never found out, like, what did Jessup know? And if he was on the right track, like, could this have been the military trying to cover up what he knew? Like, if he was really trying to dig into what Allende said, could his alleged suicide have actually been just like a murder attempt, right? Like an assassination? They're like, get the heck out of here, guy. You're too close to this. And we're going to fast forward a little bit here. This is where things get a little wonky, so hold on to your seatbelts because things are about to get weird. Fast forward to 1983, when a movie came out. The movie was called The Philadelphia Experiment, right? honestly, this would make a great movie because it's so far-fetched and crazy. Like, who's actually gonna believe that this really happened? Let's make a movie out of it, and we'll just spoof it, right? Nobody will actually know that this is a real thing. If we make a movie and it seems that far-fetched, people will believe it's actually that far-fetched. This man named Al Bielek, he watched this movie with his family at the time, and was like, oh, cool, what a cool movie. Then started having crazy flashbacks of like actually being on the ship and actually being this scientist and working on this project. And he started having like crazy visuals of like this, I don't know, this glow, and him and his brother like jumping off this boat. He said that his name was actually Edward Cameron, not Al Bielek, and his brother Duncan Cameron was also on this boat, and they were helping the Navy to try to figure out this like thing. And he said that one of the devices, the name was called the Time Zero Generator. So basically what he said happened, because he went to like a hypnotherapist, was like, I'm having these crazy flashbacks, like what the heck is going on? And this hypnotherapist was like, oh, cool, let's like try to, get your memories back. And this is what Ed/Al, because they're the same person, right? He says his name's Edward Cameron, but in this life that he's currently living, he's Al Bielek. So Al, he says that once the boat started to glow, him and his brother Duncan knew that something was weird, because they were just scientists working on this project. They knew something was weird. They jumped off the boat. They were like, yeah, because everyone started feeling like dizzy and nauseous and like started not feeling good. And they had worked on a project very similar to this, so they knew that this wasn't like a normal feeling. And then the glow, which again wasn't normal because they had worked on a project like this, they're like, okay, we got to get out of here. So him and his brother jumped off the boat. Remember at the beginning when I said that a couple sailors like fell into this space-time continuum? These are the sailors I'm talking about. They jumped off this boat and woke up in a hospital. They never hit the water. Here's what is being said. They never hit the water. They woke up in a hospital in 2137. The year 2137. Apparently, they stayed in this hospital for a month or more. They asked a bunch of questions, and they got like all these answers, right? Because between World War II, which is where they left, 1943 to 2137, a lot of things have changed. So they would show them like this map of the U.S. where the water had risen over the land and changed the outline of the U.S., right? So they were asking these questions. The West Coast and the southeast area were now all underwater. Florida underwater, except for the Panhandle. And they were very disturbed. Duncan and Ed Cameron, the Cameron brothers. They were like, what the actual fuck is happening, right? I mean, wouldn't you be a little disturbed? So then, I don't know what happened, but of course some pieces were still missing. And then all of a sudden, they like made another time travel jump. And they jumped again forward in time to the year 2749. 2749. Guys, we're in 2022. Like, that's a freaking ways, right? They jumped all the way. This time, again, they woke up in a hospital. And of course, again, all the technology, things are really unfamiliar. Like, there's a lot that has changed. He said he was in a hospital, like, situation, but he was being treated by, like, lights and vibrations. And there were, like, TV-type screens playing images all around him. And he said that the programs were mostly about, like, news and history, geography, whatever. There wasn't really a lot of entertainment. But he did actually stay in that time period for about 2 years this time. So he got to stay a little bit longer. When he was in 2137, again, like I said, he only stayed for like a month, maybe a little bit more than a month, but not too long, and he mostly stayed in the hospital. In 2749, he got to stay for a couple years. He actually got to kind of make a little bit of a life for him. But there were also no more like government agencies. He says that this whole, like, everything was controlled by this like computer like system that would communicate with humans like telepathically, and that there pretty much like horrible wars had depleted the population. So Russia had waged a war with China, and the US waged wars with the European countries, which seems weird, like knowing our politics in today's day and age. Like, we're all friends. Like, the US is friends with most of the European countries. Russia and China don't hate each other, but they don't love each other either. They're just kind of like whatever. Anyway, he said what had once been like 7.7 billion people in the world had depleted down to 3 million. Excuse me, 300 million. Which, I mean, I just like to connect conspiracy theories. So if you look back to the Georgia Guidestones, the New World Order episodes, they said under 500 million. So maybe they're just following the Guidestones. Who knows? Maybe this computer-like system that controls everything saw the Guidestones and was like, yep, that seems like a good way to control the world. I don't know. That's just me. That has nothing to do with this. Anyway, the humans had become masters of technology. They perfected anti-gravity. People lived in floating cities. Some of the lower class people like still lived on the ground, which, of course, every single movie, TV show, anything you see, that's kind of how it works, right? Like, the really high rich people live way up in the sky, and that kind of is how it is now, right? Penthouses. But like in a floating city, and all the poor people lived on the ground with all the smog and grossness. And artificial intelligence had mostly taken over. So people didn't have to think, people didn't have to eat, people literally just like, I don't know, just lived. They didn't have to do much for themselves. Literally every movie you've ever seen is like this, right? All these sci-fi movies. So then the brothers they time traveled again, but they were sent back in time this time. They went back to 1983. And this is where the Montauk Project kind of connects, because this is where like Duncan Cameron kind of falls off the edge a little bit. What is said to have happened here is that the government took the two brothers to this like top secret facility, and they were trying to brainwash the brothers. And they wanted to pretty much take Ed Cameron's, like, I guess, head. I don't even know how to explain this. They wanted to put his consciousness into a baby and take him back and tell him put him in a baby, give him to this family, the Bielek family, and say he was born in 1916, which as Edward Cameron, he was born in 1927. So they were like, okay, you're born in 1916. This is how old you are. Here you are. And they put him back in this consciousness, gave him to the Bielek family, and he was raised that way until 1988 when he saw this movie and had all these flashbacks and all these regressions to tell this whole story, right? So it's kind of this whole full circle moment where Al Bielek, who is what he was raised as his second life, remembers that he actually was Edward Cameron and did all these crazy things. I don't know. Believe it, don't believe it. It's pretty freaking far-fetched. This is a crazy story, right? Well, Duncan Cameron didn't survive the similar like regression. Anyway, it's said that he didn't survive. However, I've heard that he did survive, but he wasn't sent back because they couldn't brainwash him or they couldn't take his consciousness. So there's two different stories here. Either he's dead or he just started working for this project. Because remember, they're both scientists. They're both very intelligent men. I mean, for their age in 1943. But, I mean, I don't know, he could potentially start working for this top secret government agency, right? I don't know. Of course, the US government will never acknowledge there was ever a cloaking experiment in the Navy. There was never anything weird that happened. Everything's totally normal. This is stuff movies are made out of, and none of this could have ever happened in real life. So, I don't know what to tell you guys. You either believe that the government and Einstein and Tesla figured out how to create time travel and teleportation, or this was all just like a really cool story you like to listen to. I don't know. Believe what you want. I'm just here to give you all the facts. And that's it. That's where we're at, friends. So I look forward to doing the Montauk project next week. I hope you guys are super excited about that, because that does tie in to these Cameron brothers with the brainwashing and the transfer of the consciousness, and what happened to Duncan Cameron. Did he actually become, did he actually die? Did he start working for this project? Who really knows what happened to Duncan Cameron? All we know is that Ed/Al believes and talks. He actually goes to like conspiracy theory like conferences, like UFO cons, these different like, I don't know. He goes and he's a public speaker. And paranormal themed meetings and conventions. So I don't know. I would love to go see Ed, if he's still alive. I'll have to look into it. But until next time, my friends, stay skeptical. If you like the show, please leave us a rating and review wherever you are listening. Follow us on Instagram at rabbit.holepodcast. The Rabbit Hole is an independent podcast with all research, writing, editing, and producing done by me, Dani Mercy. Special thank you to Zakar Valaha Music.